bizarre. Is it all San Pablo or a bunch of? Yeah. I was trying to come across from Marin and I was like, what's going on? I don't understand why they would do that. The signaling is just something's wrong. We just know something's very, very wrong. Hello.
It was the stop. It was the freeway was, the lights were, the power was out, the lights. Yeah, the power went. Yeah.
Oh, really?
The intersection on Marin and.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's red blinking, right?
And it was like backed up 'cause it's coming from Little Sushi, but anyway. No, I work in, no, I work in, actually, but yeah. Is the new, okay. Is the new commissioner coming today? Okay. So, should I start? Okay. So, I guess I'll call this meeting to order, and this is my first time as chair, so Todd, Shelley, feel free to chime in if I'm missing something or out of order. I think the first item is approval of action minutes, so from meeting minutes from July 13th.
To approve the minutes from July 13th.
Okay, great. Oh, all in favor of?
Aye.
Okay, I think that's everybody. So next item, public comment. Is that how it goes? Public comment next, right? Okay. So public comment, this is for those members of the public that wish to speak on any issue that's not on the agenda. So is there anybody who's interested? Can approach the podium? No? Okay. So then the next item is announcements in the director's report.
The first announcement is that we do have another commissioner appointed by the school district who is replacing former Commissioner Tanner, who moved on to another country. Harriet Patterson will be joining us in October, and we're excited to have her start. She already had a prior commitment for tonight, so we'll see her in October. And the other announcement is that we don't have tree removal policy on tonight's agenda. Over the break, we had a nice large staff meeting and discussed many different elements of the tree policy, and we're going to be working on developing a full policy, which will address, as you guys know, a number of the things that we talk about a lot: planting, removals, and sidewalk, and how we can tie it all together into a package. So we need a little bit more time, and we'd also like the sidewalk policy to go to traffic and safety and see how that goes. So we're just going to put that on hold for a meeting and come back to it. And that's all I have.
Okay. And thanks. And so Gino and I, being on the subcommittee, we're just going to take a break from working on it until we see those recommendations. So, okay. And then the next item is the present 5-1 Memorial Park ball field fence.
Yes. And I want to point out, and if you grabbed a packet in the back, there's a corrected packet in front of you on this staff report, a couple of corrections I needed to make on my fault, a couple of typos in there. You'll see them in red, so you'll know what they were. The item here before the commission is addressing the Memorial Park ball field fence. And this item is really a joint project with the Albany Unified School District and the City of Albany to address the number and locations of where baseballs are being hit out of the field of play at Memorial Park. And so, unfortunately, I'm giving you a note right now that we're still working on getting the plans, the engineered drawings into Public Works for our Public Works Director to review. And we don't have that information for tonight, so you are getting estimates. But we feel pretty strongly they're going to be within this amount. So as I said, it's addressing balls that are being hit, and this is along the right field foul line. That's the Carmel side of the field, which is, there's a fence between there, between the Section B and Carmel Avenue, where we have a large number, high volume of number of balls that get hit that direction, which is pretty typical. That fence is about 8 feet tall and not really sufficient for keeping balls in the field of play. The other area that we're talking about tonight is the other foul line, which is on the left field foul line, on the veteran side of that field, and that is the tennis courts that are used by rec classes, high school tennis and residents. And again, those balls are foul balls that are being hit pretty hard and at a fence that isn't the right height. And so those are the two that we're talking about tonight. I am not sure, I don't see him here tonight, but Alan Gard from the school district should be here as a representative from the school district. I have Mark Hurley, who is our public works director, if we have a question about engineering on that side. And we were expecting the baseball coach, and I don't think he's here. No? Joe? Yes, of course. We'll give you a chance to speak to. So the first side is the right field foul line. We're estimating that to be about $23,000 to correct that. And I made this change that along that foul line, it's either adding 8 feet, because there is a section of fence that is already about 16 feet. And then along the foul line, where it's 8 feet, it would be adding an additional 16 on that one. So that would bring it up to a fairly good height and should reduce the number of balls. On the tennis court side, that fence is a tall fence, but from the field level, you can't see that it drops down. There's a retaining wall that is in the tennis court section, so you only see about 20 feet of that fence from the field, and that would be to add an additional 10 feet to that fence. There is a nice tree there that helps block some of the balls that go over there, but we do need to protect those unexpected tennis players from baseballs being hit at their backs, and that's estimated to be about $12,000. The other area that we have had some occurrences, and we may have some comments tonight about this, is there's an area in right field, which is the very large right field fence, and I brought a picture too just to show you. It's a fairly tall fence, but in one of the sections, and it has a few really large trees sporadically placed. Coming soon. This fence, and I made a correction because I had a placeholder, but it is about 30 feet tall. And the balls that are getting hit out of here are what you would typically see for a home run ball. And this is a pretty high fence. I don't have the exact measurements of the distance from home plate to this fence, but it would... Yeah, it is 299, and what I would say is that is to a farther location in center field. Yes, I think that you are correct. Yes, sir. And we'll give you a chance to talk at the podium for sure. I would estimate it's about 250 is my guess, and I know I have a couple of baseball people that might have input on that too. But what happens typically here is that balls are getting hit out. Those are home runs in a game, which is I'm sure is very exciting, and we're happy for our home team. The coach estimates that there are a handful of balls that will go out during that time. I think it is important to note that kids that are on this field doing batting practice on their own, that is unsupervised. As you know, before a Major League Baseball game, batting practice is when people hit the ball really far and out of the ballpark, and there could be a higher frequency of balls going out in this location. The issue with this is that it's a super tall fence, and in order to add some sort of height here, it is going to be an expensive change due to the poles that are in place. It has to be able to support an additional amount of fencing. So we're still working on getting what that exact estimate is, but that is the most expensive option for a fewer number of balls that are being hit. So the school district and the city believe that to get the most bang for our buck is to really address those foul balls that are being hit on either side. So the city, as I said, and the school district are teaming up, and the city is contributing $20,000 to the project, and the school district will pay the remaining portion of it. And so the estimate is about $35,000. And as I said, we are waiting for the contractor to provide the required documents to make sure we have those poles in right, that they can hold up the weight that we're going to be adding to them, and that it is safe.
Okay, is that it? Okay. Okay, so if the commission has any questions?
I have a question. Does the park have batting cages? I know there are batting cages at Ocean View, but I don't know about Memorial Park.
They do, on both sides, on the left field and right field sides of basically behind both, or at the end of the dugouts.
And they're available for the public to use at any time, or are they locked?
They can typically be locked. It's usually Little League and baseball that are utilizing this field. It's baseball centered. It doesn't mean that they couldn't, but one of the cages, the high school baseball team actually installed it on the first base side as an addition when they moved over.
So people can get onto the field and hit the balls, but they may not be able to get into the batting cages and hit balls.
The field is normally locked,
Oh.
and it should be locked. It's fairly controlled by the high school and by Little League during the seasons. So if it is left unlocked, then that is unusual. And so the kids that I did witness, I was there when a few kids were out there hitting, just trying to take batting practice. They probably were allowed to be on the field from their coach or something, but it wasn't a supervised practice.
I have a question. Is there a standard for, is there some kind of standard for the fencing for baseball practice?
In terms of height?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. This is, obviously, they've made this fence pretty tall for the distance in this field, this part of the field, in order to discourage balls being hit over it. It's likened to like the big green monster in Fenway Park, where it's super high and it's kind of short, and it increases the difficulty of hitting it out of the ballpark at this location. And they make recommendations if you're building a brand new field, you would adjust the dimensions to be able to accommodate an older age group. And so I think in this situation, the accommodation was to raise the height of the fence. But typically, you'll see baseball fences at 6 feet in an outfield if they're long enough. Yeah.
I see.
And I'm sorry, the number, the 35,000, I don't see an estimate for the right center outfield. That's not here, right?
That's the one we're still waiting on.
We're still waiting, and that
Yes.
would be significant, probably as much as the other.
According to, yes, the comment from the contractor, fencing contractor, was that would be a very expensive change.
And, okay.
And unfortunately, we don't have that number.
Sure, no, I
We've been
understand.
trying very hard.
I can't even begin to imagine what it would be. But nonetheless, whatever that number is, the city is still only suggesting they would contribute 20,000.
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't, the proposal is to adjust both of the tennis and the right field line and not the center field line.
At this point.
At this point. I'm making a recommendation, and I've made this request, and I wish the coach was here to confirm this, is that there can be a programmatic change, and that is this discussion about limiting just unsupervised and open batting practice on the field, because that's when I think you'll see a higher rate of balls being hit out at this location. There are batting cages available, but it seems like that would be a good trade-off in order to reduce the number and still.
And I'm hoping that the residents, when they have an opportunity to speak, might tell us whether they see people there when they shouldn't be there, or adults there, and things like that, because I would be curious about that situation.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, with these modifications, will it be sufficient? Like, is there, who made that determination? I mean, can we be assured that this is good enough?
Yeah, this is coming from consulting the high school baseball coach and the athletic director at the high school. They're the ones that are seeing most of the, it's varsity and JV baseball,
Okay.
where this is happening the most. But the increase in the right field line and tennis will help with all users that use that field. Little leaguers up to 14-year-old, they're heading it into the dog area and to the street as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, so we're going to open up to public comment, and we're asking that people who want to speak on this issue come up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes, and we're going to let everybody who wants to speak on this issue, take turns, obviously, and then when that period is over, we'll come back and our commission will discuss. During that period of time when we're discussing, that's not a back and forth, it'll just be a discussion here. But if it seems like the audience wants to again make comment, we can decide at that point to open it up again. Does that make sense? So does anybody want to speak on this issue? Okay, thanks.
just here and speak into this little black ball there.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, well, anyway, my name is Dieter Bender, and I thank you for putting this issue on your schedule. My wife and I have, ever since the high school baseball team came back from Cougar Field to play baseball at Memorial Park, tried to make officials in the school district and the city of Albany aware of the alarming frequency of baseballs landing in our front yards, windows, windshields, and even rooftops. Cars are being hit driving along Thousand Oaks Boulevards, and pedestrians have just been lucky so far. I have talked with coaches. They all acknowledge that during any given batting practice or games, balls will clear the outfield and a fence parallel Thousand Oaks and hit with topspin will accelerate after hitting the pavement and find a target. Besides the team's official workouts and games, players of all ages will at any given afternoon or evenings walk unsupervised onto the field and aim for the fences with little understanding of the dangers involved. The answer I often get is, it's a baseball field, and sometimes I get curses because I'm retired and I sometimes walk over there and make the kids aware of what's going on. At times I even thought getting my baseball mitt out of my closet to fetch balls to protect my bay window, which I have to replace anyway right now. During certain Sundays of the year, the field is now rented out to an adult league. And these guys look quite impressive and hit the balls accordingly. Whoever signed off on this particular arrangement clearly did not do their homework relating to safety. I mean, these are really big guys, and they're adults. They look like semi-pros, and maybe somebody can find out, and that should not be allowed at all. To sum it up, the fence dimensions as they are right now on Memorial Park Field are not the proper dimension recommended nationwide. The outfield should be 400 feet. The foul line should be 325 feet at least. That's the minimum recommended. The old fence was actually taken down and was about 8 feet taller than this monster is right now. And there also was one of those needle trees that was as tall as the other two, but they had to replace that one. Oh, my time is up. Anyway, there should be signs posted at all entrances to the field that nobody past high school age should be allowed to hit baseballs unsupervised or without permission. I have to watch. No, well, I love baseball, and I was a Little League coach myself for a time, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. I love baseball, and I'm just here to make you all aware of the dangers that are out there and then occurring on this particular field. So, and there is a
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay.
Good evening. My name is John Heathcliff, and I live, if you can go back to that first picture you had, that's my car right there. That's Dieter's house. So the balls kind of head right down Ramona when they're hit really hard. And I think Dieter also captured the problem of not just a home run hit, but actually if they just clear the fence and hit the ground, they just take off. So it's kind of a ricochet effect. And could you go back to that other slide real quick? The one from the aerial view?
The overall field?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. So Dieter's lived there. How long, Dieter?
34 years.
34 years. So he's seen a lot of. Yeah, he's seen a lot of balls come over his distance, so it's not as if he's kind of just surprised by this. It's been an ongoing problem, and I know through our conversations that There are times when he hasn't even gone over to the school to tell him that he's been hit by a ball or that the broken windows happened or something, just because, it takes too long, it's too much hassle. Other houses too. I mean, one of the things that occurs to me is, are there other ways to look at this? There's golf courses around all over that have fences that are put up to protect, from balls going outside. So if it's something that where a fence is too expensive, then a netting could be put up. But something should be put up to kind of guard against, the balls being hit out of the park. Sometimes the balls too aren't baseballs; they're rubber balls. They're just throwing batting practice, and so they get even more trajectory coming over the fence. So just looking at considering some other options. And if there is some sort of a process too, where if anybody did get hit or if, Dieter's windows get broken or tiles get broken, there's a more immediate process to kind of get things followed up on because, as opposed to just kind of having to swallow it and, move on, there's really nothing in place where somebody can get it taken care of. My son is a sophomore at AHS. I support AHS. I think they have a great baseball program. I'd hate to see them switch the diamond so that they were hitting from the opposite end and going over the other way onto the school. So you got to kind of look at it both ways and kind of flip it around. We don't want balls going into the school or into the property and hitting kids, but we also don't want them going over the other side and hitting residents and cars and things like that. So if you would just look at all the options and make sure that if anything does happen, there's a process in place. Because I know Dieter's kind of swallowed it a bunch of times, and obviously, thank God, nobody's been hit. And also my car, hopefully that my car won't get hit too. So those are my comments. One thing I'm really happy about is that it's not an archery field. Thank you.
Thank you.
My suggestion.
Hi, I was not aware of this till 2 minutes ago, so maybe I'm asking the wrong questions. What was the rationale of moving from the middle school with plenty of space, not that many residential nearby houses at all? Why on earth was it moved to a residential area like this? It just doesn't make any sense. And the amount of money it's going to cost we taxpayers to put up this additional fencing, it surely would make far more sense just go back where they came from, much more space, far less homes, where it came from the first. I don't understand why it was ever moved in the first place. And I agree with these two gentlemen that we should not have adults playing baseball there on the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would like to ask Dieter a question. So you said that when they put the new fence in, it was lower than the old fence. The old fence was higher. Did it get worse when that happened? I mean, was the 8 feet enough, or do you remember?
Maybe you could come. Can you come?
Hey, I'm sorry. Can you come step up again? It gets recorded in public record.
Yeah, the Albany High School team moved down to Cougar Field for some years, and as the lady just pointed out, and then during that period of time, all of a sudden there were some arrangements made. Actually, the Little League played at one diamond, and the girls' softball team was on the other side, and so that all got changed around. I'm sure that cost money to put up all that stuff, but that was sort of chunked within a couple of months. I don't know what happened there, who planned all this. So
I'm really curious if the additional 8 feet helped.
Absolutely it helped,
Okay,
yes.
that's what I
I mean,
wanted.
there is an incredible frequency of balls that do go over this fence alongside Thousand Oaks Boulevard. It's frightening at times.
I understand.
And there are some really, really big guys after hours go onto these fields. And really, if I could do it, I would probably aim over to hit a home run as well. I mean, that's the name of the game, and that's what they're trying to do, and quite often succeed in doing this.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So we don't officially rent to anyone over that age, no. It's Little League.
City programs that? It's not?
Yes, no, this is a city field, so we have permits. And so if someone's coming outside of that time, then we need to do a better job of making sure we get those gates locked, yes. It doesn't stop someone from climbing a fence, but now if the fence on the foul line gets a little taller, that might help keep people out as well.
Is there any other public comment? Alan Gard, right, is here from school district. I don't know, Shelley was saying that you might have a comment, no?
Or if we had a question for.
Okay, great, if you have questions. Okay, so I'm going to close the public comment now, and then now we can discuss. Anybody has comments or questions?
I can explain the field switch. So in 2010, the school district had a situation with a Title IX lawsuit. It was girls softball, baseball got involved in this. Girls softball would share this field, the Memorial Field, which is the city's field, with Little League, and it was a baseball field. They were missing some amenities that boys baseball had on the old baseball Cougar Field, and the city tried to help the school district with their situation by making a swap, giving the girls softball team their own field, which would have a smaller field and dugouts and batting cages, which they did not have at this location. And the high school baseball team moved to Memorial, so that did take place during that time. And some modifications made to the field at that time.
I have a question from one of the comments that was brought up about the orientation of the field. So that idea of putting it on the opposite, or on one of the corners where the balls would go towards the high school, I don't know if that would solve anything. I don't know if that's just changing the problem. I'm not sure if it would still require heightening the fences. Just curious about that. What's that?
Yeah, you're not going to get any more distance and
Right, okay.
going right into populated areas
So
where
you're,
pedestrians are walking around.
okay, it's worse. Just wanted to check.
And Gino, is there even orientation for the sun come into play here, or is it just
No, really it'd be the same thing. You would just move the fence. You just have a taller fence on this side. Foul balls would still go out on the street and hit the other houses on this side. Orientation.
And then the question about the switching, is it ever, do you imagine it to switch back at some point in the future? I mean, is this working well, this change?
I don't foresee that.
Okay.
I think that has helped. I mean, Allen is the school district. It's not necessarily a city thing, except that we tried to help provide space for the baseball program on our field. But it helped with the situation that they had at the time with Title IX and made an incredible difference for the girls softball program, which was important. Yeah. They have a scoreboard and they have other amenities that they did not have at this location.
And I can add that as much as an archery range would be great, baseball fields are at a premium. Everyone is overscheduled as it is, so it's not like we can eliminate this baseball field without consequence.
And then just a question generally, and this is maybe just my own lack of knowledge about how these baseball fields get rented out, but it's a city field that's being used by the school district, which is related, that's not inconsistent, but I'm just wondering how much the public does have access to that field.
We have a joint use agreement with this Unified School District, Albany Unified School District, sharing the spaces. They use the baseball field, they use our tennis courts. We can use their gym for a summer camp, and it is at no charge. There's a written agreement for that. The baseball field currently will, depending on the season, is rented by Little League or other baseball programs. It's typically a baseball-oriented field, but the outfield has been used by youth soccer. That's the other thing. It is a field that is by permit, and most of our fields, even Ocean View, the use is by permit. It's an effort to try to keep the fields in good shape for the people who are paying to rent the field.
And does the field get maintained also, split by the district and the city?
Yes. So for high school baseball or varsity, junior varsity baseball, they do maintenance that helps take care of their specialized sport. And then also Little League does a lot of maintenance when they're using the field as well. We, in the past, have had a contract with the Albany Little League to pay for them to maintain our fields in terms of maintain them in the baseball sense of dragging them and keeping them up to the proper playing condition. So as you can see, this has a specialized infield, grass infield that is mowed by hand and weeded and to keep balls bouncing more consistently. Yeah.
So I guess when it comes down to the funding, is this split consistent with how other things are split between the school district and the city with regards to this field?
I think we took the approach of, $20,000 was probably going to be more than half of it. It is the city's field, and the school district is using it. So it may end up being a 50-50 depending on the final cost,
Okay.
so.
So do I understand correctly that, that the recommendation here is to give $20,000, that we're recommending the right field foul line fence be changed and the tennis court fence, but there still will be some research into what needs to be done for the right center outfield fence, and sort of putting that in the hands of the school district to figure that out? But tonight, we're asked to recommend if that $20,000 should go towards those two other fences.
Yes, so you'd be approving the proposal to modify those two, tennis and right field. We're still going to continue the getting the proposal and seeing what the cost of center field is. And Alan from the school, we're in contact and we'll be working with Zeke, the athletic director, and the baseball coach to try to make some of the programmatic modifications in the meantime to see if we can help reduce that number. And then we're going to have to just closely monitor to see what kind of, if we can make an impact on reducing the number of balls that go out of that section of the field. And if we cannot, and it continues to be a problem, we'll have to address that together, yeah.
So we're going to see this again once you get the proposal for the final quotes. Are we going to see it again?
You won't, but it will go to council because of the amount of money that is being spent, so they'll have the final approval based on the total dollar.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's not a blank check, we're just, okay.
Yeah. And we, as it said, we sent out a notification to make sure that we got input from the neighbors in that area, notifying them, you know, that this would be taking place and making sure we're getting input and recommendations on if there was a change or if we encouraging this programmatic change, and just really wanted to make sure that they had a venue for giving their comments.
Right. Okay, does anybody have any?
Well, I can
Other
say,
comments,
so
or-
we've spoken a bit about the right field fence, right center fence, but I can also speak about the right foul fence. I've been in section B and many times seen a ball come over and nearly hit someone. So, I mean, there's definitely a need on the foul lines as well. I haven't seen it on the tennis courts, but that's because my dog is on the other side of the field.
This is the current
But
height
it does
of
not
that.
surprise me. That would be a right-handed hitter, yeah. Yeah, no, it frequently, balls come over into the section B.
But they come back because the dogs bring them back, at least.
They maybe a little bit. Now, I would suggest that often the balls that come into section B aren't hit that hard. They're not coming as hard as they probably are coming down over that tall fence. So the only way that I would say, well, maybe we need to hold off on these side fences would be if it was that either or. You know, if we could only do one thing, I'm not sure which one I would go with. The right field fence that's hitting these folks' houses and going down the street, or the one that's getting like little pops into the section B.
And that maybe for city council eventually, they could look at how much more it would cost if we did it separately. I mean, it might be bundled cost cheaper, yeah. One thing I would say for me, because I understand some of the comments about city resources and what things go for, but it seems like we'd want to keep the most we want the solution to be the most flexible. So even if it changes back to, you know, younger players, 5 years later, it might change back again. So I don't know that it really is a long-term, it's not sufficient, I think, just to let it go the way it is if there have been concerns. And it seems like this solution might be a good long-term solution. I mean, how long what's the lifespan of a fence? No.
These are fairly new, but when we renovated this field, I believe it was in 2006. So
I mean, good, like, what, Mark, like 20, I don't know, 20, 30, something like that? What's that?
Safely say 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years over, that amount of money over 20 years, I think is pretty good value for the number of people it could protect and the property values. So those are reasons that I would support this proposal.
the comment is that this is a well taken care of field, and it does depend on the use, because you will see some recreation fields where they have kids hitting the balls against the fence, and the fence will start to bow out in a spot, if you've ever seen that. But the people that are using this fence care for this field because it is a special place for them. So it's well maintained and it will last a long time.
Does anybody have?
So I would make a motion to recommend the proposal.
A second.
Okay, all in favor of, yeah? All in favor. And are you you're abstaining, right? Because you're within that line.
I need to recuse myself.
Okay, you recuse yourself, I'm sorry. Okay, so We have 1, 2, 3, 4, so all in favor, so it passes, right? Okay. So next item, 5.2, street tree removal, application of 944 Stannage.
Okay. Which had a baseball. It's your PowerPoint, right?
Okay, I received an application for removal of a camphor tree at 944 Stannage. This is a tree. It's a tree where there's been previous sidewalk repair. Sidewalk's been repaired and it's been rerouted to give the tree some more room, but there's still some uplifting of the sidewalk. It's kind of hard to see, but the arrows are pointing at some uplifting, correcting. Sort of make a crack there. Above the arrow, it's kind of a hump. Here you can see there's kind of a free 4-inch lip. Sidewalk's removed again. And here you can see the lip all the way across the sidewalk at the top of the hump section.
No, it's not on. There's a switch on the bottom, yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
We tricked
that's better. Okay, so, so there is some sidewalk damage on, this is where the curb used to be, there's no curb. The side of the tree, it's tree root. There's another view of where a curb would be. And here, you can sort of make out where the tree roots had been pruned at some point, I guess when the curb got pushed out, probably when the sidewalk was repaired last time. There, in the canopy, there's some dead branches, not too unusual for camphor trees. In the city, past couple of years after the drought, there's a lot of small dead branches. Things that typically we just prune these out. Otherwise, the tree is in fairly healthy condition. There's some more there. That's probably the worst of it, with some dead branches in the tree. There's power lines overhead. There's high voltage power lines. It looks like at some point the tree was topped by PG&E or pruned away from the power lines. But here's some more dead branches. So throughout the tree, there's some dead branches, but that's the full view of the tree. And the tree is healthy. My feeling is that it could withstand another sidewalk repair and survive. So my recommendation was to deny removal, although there is tree repair. The owners are here, and they brought receipts for the last sidewalk repair that was done. It was the 2009? 2009, yeah. So 8 years. That's what I have.
Okay, so any questions?
What was the cost of the sidewalk repair in 2009?
I think this is the receipt, $4,619.
About how old do you think this tree is?
Oh, it's hard to say. 35, 40 years old, maybe.
I did notice the dead branches, but you're saying that's not really a sign of particular distress, just the drought taking its toll.
Yeah, it shows some stress, but generally the tree looks pretty good, and they can be pruned out. We've done it on many trees.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
Sometimes we do some air spading and vertical mulching that kind of perks up the tree a little bit, so.
Is there any evidence one way or the other if the roots were, I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but pruned to keep it from lifting the sidewalk when the repair was done?
I can see where there were some cuts, and it's in 8 years, new roots or smaller roots that weren't cut apparently grew back and lifted the sidewalk again. But yeah, there is evidence of some older root pruning.
And I'm sorry, I should have reviewed the tree policy, the tree removal policy, but what's our, what do we say about sidewalk repair and the number of times that, just once? So if a resident repairs the sidewalk once and the second time they come to us, that is reason for removal?
They can ask.
Can
Doesn't mean we
ask.
have to. Yeah. It just means it makes it okay. And the one observation I had when I went out and looked at it is it's, you can see a little bit in this picture, but the entire yard slopes up to the tree, so that the yards next to them are pretty flat, right at the level of or near the level of the street, but at grade, but it really slopes up. Beautiful tree, though. Really very nice tree.
Any other questions before we go to public comment?
Is there any choice other than remove or leave? I mean, it's a beautiful tree.
I think one question, John, for me related to that is, part of my research into this whole policy is what are some other alternative materials? And it was really helpful to have Gino working with me on that, being a contractor and doing many sidewalk repairs. And I think one issue that other cities have found is that alternative materials on a pathway could sometimes alleviate that issue because there's more opportunities to do proactive root trimming. I know we don't have that right now, but that is something that Mark Hurley, who was just here, was looking into. And with the sidewalk repair, anyway, I'm kind of getting into discussion, but that's the short. So I guess a question for you, John, I'm not sure if you know it, is if alternative materials might be a solution to this issue.
I think alternative materials are still kind of experimental. I don't think there's any really well-documented examples where they survive large root. I mean, talking flexible, permeable materials that are still going to hump up, and there's still going to be I'm not sure how that would abide with ADA regulations, or to have a flexible sidewalk over a large root causing a hump in the sidewalk. So.
And if the tree were to be, or if the sidewalk was to be repaired again with the tree, what would you recommend in terms of root trimming for the sidewalk?
There's a major root that would need to be pruned right where the top of the hump is, where it seems to be coming out directly from the side of the tree and lifting the sidewalk. And
so that could be cut back, and then the sidewalk could be more flat. Is that the idea, or?
Well, it's hard to say when the concrete's there. When the concrete's up, we'll see what other roots might be there. But there's something large root, right?
I have a question. Sorry, but I have a question about that total, the 4,600. Does that include the driveway? Because it looked like the driveway was also new, and so I'm not sure if that cost was just that part or the entire sidewalk only. Didn't include the driveway. Was the driveway separate? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you'll have a time to make a public comment. So is there any other questions?
Yes, I guess I was trying to ask if there's any financial way that it could be, the cost of another sidewalk could be borne by the city, you know, an emergency addition to the sidewalk repair group or something, because clearly, at least it seems from the receipt, they have put significant money into this already.
Yeah. Question for Mark, who's not here anymore, I imagine, for engineering. I'm not sure if the tree's on the city sidewalk repair program list or,
Shelley, I don't know if this is an opportunity for you to weigh in because of some of the discussions that you've had around this, or just generally the tree policy.
That's not on the agenda tonight, but if the recommendation is to keep the tree, then I would recommend that we make sure the homeowner gets on this list, and at least we can talk to Mark about this sidewalk and see if it can be, have a note next to it, yeah. That's all we can, at this point, really offer, is to make sure that they know that there is a tree list, and make a note that it's come before Parks and Rec, and that if you were to keep that tree. That's what the object is, or what our goal is later as we address sidewalk and trees together, is to come up with a solution for a situation like this.
So that there can be some financial contribution by the city when something like this happens. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, so public comment. Does anybody want to speak on this?
It's in 8 years ago.
Oh, sorry, can you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
8 years ago, about the problem, we asked for remove the tree, but the city refused. They said, now we do forever. You know, we have to make sidewalk, everything. We listen the city what they said. He said, if going to happen again, we going to remove the tree. At that time, they tell us. Now, the driveway is difficult. When we go in the car, you bump your car. Every day, we have the kind, you know, dangerous. See, when you hit, just make the car, you know, damage.
It's not so much the car issue as the sidewalk issue is lifting like 3-4 inches. And so it's more a pedestrian issue that we would have to shave down this, like we just want some direction. Do we need to shave down that? I'd love to save the tree, but 8 years is not a very long term for such a huge bill. So like you were suggesting, if there's some type of financial reimbursement, or you guys take the bill this time to do the work, because then we all get to enjoy the tree. I mean, we can get in the driveway, but if it's going to happen so quickly, it's like we're prolonging the problem.
I was said, these trees have problem. Usually root, you go to the ground, that lift up, all root just grow in top.
Well, it was
Not
pruned the
go
first
to the
time so that, and we also went
ground.
around it to help that we wouldn't cut it back so much, but then it still lifted that much in that amount of time. And with the drought, I think that also escalated everything, but it's been lifting even after just a few years. And, you know, we talked about the rules in San Francisco, if it lifts like an inch or something like that, you have to fix it right away. This is like 3 or 4 inches. It's a, you know, the residents around us are young and old. It's a trip risk every day, you know, so it's just a huge concern. And it's not just the sidewalk. Our private driveway is wrecked, and I believe it's from the tree too, but we're not even talking about that today. We're talking about the sidewalk. So.
So that's, we was thinking, you know, we don't know about the tree, but now is problem, because 8 years ago, we already said that trees need to remove. But the city said, no, we do it, we pay for it. But now, another problem. So we don't know the rule, and everybody like tree, we like tree too. See, but if the trees have round, like some people, the the tree, the root should go to ground, not up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for considering this matter.
Any other comments?
Hi, my name's Chai Levy, and I live across the street. And thank you for alerting us, the neighbors, about this issue. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to, I appreciate that you've attempted to fix the problem, and I just really strongly wanted to suggest that the sidewalk be repaired, and if the city could help pay for that, that would be great, since the owners have clearly already made an effort. The tree is a significant feature of the street. I see it out my windows, and it's really the only beautiful tree on the street. It's mostly you see just utility electricity poles, and I think that it would significantly impact the beauty of the street, and it really adds to the environmental and beauty features of the neighborhood. So just really I showed up tonight just to say, please keep the tree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Ed Fields, and I live on Keynes Avenue, not on the 900 block. And I went and looked at the tree. I hadn't paid much attention to it, even though I've been on that block many times before. And so I had some questions and comments, and I think you've kind of covered them in your earlier kind of question session, but I kind of want to maybe emphasize them. So when I see a city staff report and it says fiscal impact, cost estimated at $3,000, I usually assume that fiscal impact is an impact for the city's budget. But I think you've clarified that, no, this was an estimated impact for the homeowner, right?
No, that's an estimate for the price of removing the tree.
For removing the tree, okay. So,
Which is borne by the city.
which is borne by the city. So maybe the city, as you've already discussed, maybe the city should spend the $3,000 on the sidewalk repair. So now I'm glad you clarified that. So it is a cost for the city, but it's not a cost to repair the sidewalk. Interesting. Okay, I think, Todd, you alluded to something that I believe I noticed, I'm not sure, because I haven't paid super attention to this tree, but in the previous repair, they not only curved the sidewalk around the tree, they also curved the sidewalk vertically. There's a big hump there. You don't usually see that in the city. Usually the hump is when the tree raises the sidewalk, and then there's some root pruning done, and then the sidewalk is usually flat again. But this looks like it goes up a foot or two. I mean, it's a big, huge hump. And as they pointed out, and again, it just appears to me that they had to pave their driveway with a hump. They actually had to pave it with a hump to accommodate the tree roots that were left. Another question that I had is why the tree looks so lopsided? Because it looks, the high side looks like the side near the high voltage wires. Usually it's PG&E that prunes by the high voltage wires and makes the tree look lopsided. But this looks like, I mean, it's a beautiful tree, but I think it could look a lot more beautiful. And then my other question, when you look at the species camphor, what's the 32 inches? Is that the diameter? It says DBH?
Yeah.
That's not a 32-inch diameter at eye level, is it?
Maybe not.
I don't think it's anywhere near there. I mean, and again, I'm not suggesting that it's a smaller tree and you should take it out, but I mean, it seems pretty clear that the city should, for numerous reasons, including some the homeowner pointed out, the city should put this on the list. I mean, I think what's happening, I haven't seen the list. I'd like to see the list of the sidewalk repair. I mean, that's a whole other process. But I think it's just a lot of homeowners who are negligent and have let their sidewalk get totally out of hand and become dangerous. And the city's come in and said, well, we'll fix that. Where here you have homeowners who were conscientious 8 years ago, and now they're being told, well, it's your job to pay for it again. I mean, you're not saying that, but that's kind of what the rules are, and that's what we need to fix. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I found out about this on Tuesday, and I walked by your house on Tuesday. I was shocked. It's over 2 feet, the heat, where it's cracking, and I hate to destroy trees. This tree needs to be destroyed. At the very base, to less than 4 feet, is one trunk. It splits very wide into 2 trunks. The top just about touches the power lines again. I don't know how I could drive my car into their driveway. Not only that, their front yard is leaning like this. So when you get heavy rains, even though our policy is to get drainage going to the street, when they get heavy rains, that rain is going to go into their house because of the shape of the sidewalk and the shape of their front yard because of this tree. I think that's really unfair. And the other thing is liability. Someone is going to trip on that thing, break their ankle or God knows what else. Who's liable? The city should be liable because they're denying their request, which was promised 8 years ago. They're denying their request to remove the tree, which is a danger. So I don't feel they should be in any way liable if anyone gets hurt on that tree and the damage. And I think when you say we may put them on a list for some support towards repair, that's inadequate. To do it properly, that sidewalk should be flat, level. We have handicapped, disabled, vision impaired people. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And it should be removed. And it should be removed at the city's expense. And the city should be liable if they refuse to remove that tree. Any other notes? That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay.
Hi, my name's Adrian Elfenbaum. I live directly across the street from the house. We love the tree. We hope you can keep it. We've been there 13 years, never seen anybody trip, but of course I'm not out there 24 hours a day. It gives us tons of shade. We see it out our front window. We just adore this tree. And just imagining if it were gone, it would, as Hai said earlier, just change the whole character of that part of the street completely. It would change the whole neighborhood. So if there's a way for the city to help with the cost of the repair, that would be wonderful because it's a feature of our neighborhood that we really love.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other hands, we're going to open up to discussion.
So I have a comment. Usually with the sidewalk repairs, the roots are trimmed, so the sidewalk is level. And in this case, as people pointed out, it looks like when the sidewalk was repaired, that didn't happen. If the sidewalk was repaired properly, the way that the city specs it out, I am wondering what would happen to the tree, because it survived and is thriving, probably because those roots weren't touched and the sidewalk was paved over it. But if you were to excavate and create a level sidewalk, you would cut into that main root of that tree, and it probably wouldn't be a very stable tree after that.
Well, should we ask John that question?
These are good points, and there is some evidence of some root pruning, so I don't know if the sidewalk was repaired with ramping over roots or not. If it was, then that explains why such a lift so quickly. We root prune trees when we repair sidewalks. It happens often. It happens often. You can see on the curb side, all of that was kind of cut flush to make a tree curb. You know, they survive. You know, most sidewalk repair, when I go out to look at them to decide whether or not a tree should be removed, I say, let's keep the tree, we'll root prune it, and we'll monitor the tree. We'll look at it. Tree doesn't die overnight like that. There's other rooting system that's securing the tree. It's not going to blow over easily. It takes a while for problems to show. So
when a contractor does replace a sidewalk, does the city give specs to the contractor? Does the city choose the contractor who comes out and does it, or does the homeowner just hire somebody to come out and do it?
that's a good question.
City did it.
Yeah, no, I would like to recognize you folks for doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
you've already done the things that we always try to recommend, and that's excellent.
Yeah.
And I can also say that it is not unusual, in my experience walking all over the city, to see repaired sidewalks that do hump up. It's not that they make it level every time. If there's a significant tree they really want to save, they will have a hump.
I think a lot of what we're seeing with sidewalks that have been repaired and damaged, again, the drought affects trees. Their root system is looking for water.
Sure.
And the roots are growing, and they're growing out, and they're growing high, and they're lifting concrete again, so.
I want to acknowledge that you did the right thing, and you came 8 years ago and were denied, and then you had to pay a cost. I do think one of the things we're struggling with right now is this tree policy and trying to figure out how to align incentives, because right now we don't pay for sidewalks, we do pay to cut down a tree, and that seems like we could be using those funds elsewhere, as the gentleman suggested. The other thing I want to put into to just make clear in terms of some of the monetary value is that there's actually a real significant property value boost to that tree. So they found from studies that a property that with a street tree like this, mature tree, the property that fronts that tree can increase in value up to $15,000, $20,000 for an Albany home. And as your neighbors have said, they value that tree obviously for the aesthetic value. And I went there today and looked around, and I did notice that it was the only mature, beautiful tree on that street, shaded the entire length, not necessarily your house at that moment, but the rest of the street. And the canopy, although we were talking about the diameter of the tree, the canopy of that tree I measured to be 35 feet, which is significant. In Palo Alto, they value trees based on canopy size, and that's like the second highest tier in terms of canopy width. And they would recommend if they for some reason let the property owner cut down that tree, they'd have to replace it with like 4 trees because of the significance of that canopy. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of, estimating value. But I also want to just make the point that our arborist found that it's going to be $3,000 to remove the tree, but that doesn't even include his time going out and also replanting costs. And then also there's still the sidewalk repair. So in a way, I think,
They applied for replanting also. They're willing to replant. I talked with them about maybe 2 trees if we could.
Okay. But
if the tree were to be taken out, so.
Shelley, did you want to say?
I wanted to ask the question because I've noticed in the packet about the reason why initially I think that the sidewalk got replaced was a sewer line. Mm-hmm. And in the description of the encroachment permit was that they were replacing the sewer line and to provide clearance around the tree roots. It may explain why there wasn't tree root cutting at that time. That wasn't the focus, I believe, of the initial sidewalk repair, although they did swing it around a root. So I'm not sure if they actually did the cutting. And so that might be the reason why we're seeing this unusual hump in that area.
So there's a couple things that can be done that I can do is to talk to the sidewalk people and try to get this on the list. It should be on the list. I mean, it is a dangerous lift. There's a 3-4 inch lip straight across the entire sidewalk.
I would also say it's
couldn't get down there. That's
right.
Not,
I'd also say this is a high traffic area. So I mean, not high traffic, but just being next to Solano, I think it potentially could qualify as one of the routes. I'm not sure. I don't know how they prioritize.
There's priorities. The list. I mean, the sidewalks that are repaired. There's a priority criteria. I'm not sure what it is and exactly, but it has to do with traffic and being near schools and commercial zones and all that. So I could do that. Another option is that lip get ground down. A concrete contractor grinds it and just kind of smooths it out so there's not that hazard. That's a temporary fix though, and the root's still there, and it's eventually going to lift it up again. So. Yeah. Yeah, it's a,
So usually we allow for discussion, and then we'll talk, it's okay, so that we, we can give you the space to make comment. Does anybody else have any other? Would you like to approach again? Is there something you'd like to approach about?
Excuse me, I am only worried about what we to do about our driveway. When the tree like that, did you go in the tree damage our driveway? Now, you city going to take care of the driveway? Because, the tree, the root lift up, then we cannot just each time, every years we have to do this kind job by owner or city, because city tree damage our property.
And then somebody made a comment about when it rains, and thank you for that comment, because it really does flood in there. And we have basically a pond in there until it just soaks into the ground. And I'm thinking that maybe our neighbors have a sump pump or something, because somehow the water disappears after a day, but it's literally like I have to wear galoshes to get into my car.
You should make the area fresh. The water should go up, not go soak in our house.
There's a huge
That's what we
slope.
worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, ideally, we would want to have some, I don't know if it's black or white, take out the tree or leave the tree. I think we're here to find a solution to keep the tree and not have to pay these large bills every several years. So if we can work together for a solution and get maybe higher on the list of repair, maybe do a temporary grind down for now until we come up with a true solution. I think that the root was cut at the time they did this work, because John had spoke to that a little bit. I don't know if it was done absolutely correctly or if other little roots came in its place and started lifting that hump again.
Thank you. I want to thank the property owners for being flexible. I just think that from what I'm hearing, especially with the flexibility of the property owner, I would recommend that we do not take action to remove the tree at this time. But I do think and John, I'm not sure if maybe you're the one to take this on, is to look into how we can recommend them as a commission to be on the priority list for the reasons that we see. And also, I think this tree is exactly the kind of tree we want to keep in this city. And the amount that we were going to have to pay even to remove the tree, it seems silly to not try first to fix the sidewalk. I know that your bill was that amount, but I think maybe in the city, if we're doing it through a contract, might be lower than that. So we shouldn't expect that $4,600 to be the cost that the city would have to pay to repair the sidewalk. But I also want to acknowledge that the neighbors that came out tonight, which I appreciate, because their property values are also affected by this tree. At the same time, they don't have to pay for the sidewalk to be repaired. So it truly should be a city thing that we compensate. I don't know. We should be, as a city, helping these property owners who have beautiful trees that we all, benefit from. So I would recommend that, especially since we're not even sure if this site is on priority, the motion would be to deny the tree removal, but to also strongly suggest that this location be put on the priority sidewalk repair list. And if there can even be an interim solution that Mark can take care of before that goes through to grind down or whatever else. Sorry, that's a long motion.
yeah, I don't think grinding would be, it's either do it or don't do it.
Okay, so just to be put on the priority list.
In this picture, you can see underneath the panel that's lifted up. There's no way you can grind that and have anything left. You'd have
Okay, yeah.
might be able to do a patch or something. But.
Before you take a second and we take action on that motion, can we discuss?
Yeah. We can.
Yeah.
Need a second.
Well, it depends on whether we're just continuing discussion or discussing the motion.
Yes, I think that the issue that I have with denying the application is that the residents paid the fee to bring this application forward, and if we deny it outright, and in a year, they come back to us, they're gonna have to pay it again. And I guess I want to know more about the health of the tree, and like, if the sidewalk were to be repaired, like, and before we've had, when the sidewalks opened up, there's an evaluation of the tree's health. And we sometimes say, if the tree can be saved, then, we do A, and if we recognize that the tree cannot be saved, then we approve the application. And I would want to keep it open in that sense, because I don't want them to have to come back in a year. They've already paid once $4,000 to fix this. Like, as a homeowner, it's a lot.
So what's in the tree policy is that if you deny the removal of the tree, and then when they go out to repair the sidewalk and John is on site, that he decides that the root pruning that takes place would kill the tree, then on site he can decide to remove the tree.
And
So it's a denial, keep the tree, but an on-site decision based on the root pruning that takes place, the tree can be taken out.
And I had a question about the root pruning. So we've always considered root pruning in order to make the sidewalk level. What about for the driveway? Is root pruning permitted to make a driveway usable?
It would have to be, I imagine.
You think so? Well, I don't know if it would have to be.
Well, in this case, I think it would have to be.
Okay, okay.
Well, that's a question generally for the sidewalk repair. Is the sidewalk repair going to include the portion of the sidewalk that goes into the driveway? Do you know?
That is a good question. I think not. I think the sidewalk repair project is just
It might have.
covering the, repairing the sidewalk.
Okay.
Not
The apron?
either side, yeah, the apron or the driveway itself.
Do you want to step up? Oh,
And the owner is still responsible for this sidewalk repair that we're talking about. So in opening the sidewalk up to determine what's going to happen with the roots, the owners would have to pay that, whether or not the tree comes down.
Unless they're on the list for the city.
My recollection of the new sidewalk repair policy is that when the city elects to repair the sidewalk, that they would also repair associated driveway damage. Now, initially, I always assumed that meant the slope driveway from the sidewalk to the street. In this case, it's on the other side. But I don't know that it specifies that. I think it just says driveway, but someone could find it pretty quickly.
Yeah, so maybe we can look into that.
Julie, is there anything to gain from postponing this vote until our next meeting so that John can find out about getting this sidewalk on the list before we
Sure.
deny?
Okay. Let's see. So that's a motion, I guess. You could make that a motion, right? It's a motion to.
I think we already have a motion.
No, you can't do, you have to say no to the first one. And
I will second that motion. Your motion.
Oh, you second my motion. Okay. So do you want to take a vote on the first motion? And then if that's denied, then you can make a motion? Is that how it would work?
Correct.
Sequentially?
Correct.
Shelley's.
I'm getting motion sickness. You have a motion in a second,
Okay.
right?
So then I'll do the vote. How many in favor of the motion to? So this is the motion to deny the tree removal and recommend that this location be on the priority sidewalk repair list to DPW. And we have a second. All in favor? You're not in favor? Didn't you talk
I second it so we can move the process.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. So all not in favor, all opposed, okay? Okay, so it doesn't carry. So do you want to?
Well, so I would like to make a motion that we postpone final vote on this tree, final decision on this tree, until our next meeting to allow John to get more information specifically about getting this sidewalk on the list. So if you can come back with more
Sure, it can get on
information.
the list. The question is where it gets prioritized and
Well,
when.
And is that,
We can look into that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay.
So
So
I would just
what's,
say as part of discussion.
okay, sorry, yes.
Even with that, they're still suffering from the slope, pushing water down. They're still having the driveway issue. I just want to say it's not just the sidewalk here.
Okay.
More.
Does that mean that other information needs to be gathered?
I think we have that information.
Okay, okay.
I'm just saying that we are hinging the decision on who pays for the sidewalk repair, and there's more to it than that. That's all I'm saying by my point. Is
Okay.
Keep that in mind. That's all.
And that, I think we'd have a better discussion
Sure.
about that next month,
Sure.
which is why
I
I'm making
suppose.
my
That's correct.
motion.
Very good,
So-
very good.
Okay, so who's in favor of the motion to postpone until next month when we have more information? Okay, all in favor, okay.
Get down there.
And I would just say, to close up this item, that those who came out to speak, it's both, those property owners and those also interested, you can, welcome to come back again, because it will be another public comment period where we'll consider all the voices, so it is important for those voices to show up if they want to be heard. Thank you.
I'll send emails. If
Yeah, sure, you can send in emails. We'll read them up. We'll read them here. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Tough call.
Okay, so, sorry, next item. Okay, so next item, 6.1, Albany Hill hazardous tree removals. John.
Okay, I'm just going to introduce, John is here, it's the John Tree Show tonight, but we also have Margot Cunningham, who is the city's coordinator for Albany Hill Vegetation Management, working with me and handling all of the vegetation management out there, and so she and John are going to make the next presentation about the hazardous trees.
Hello. So I've been working on Albany Hill, going by the Albany Hill Master Plan, doing the vegetation management component. So for the last several months, we've been working on removing invasive plants on the hill, shrubs and trees. And one of these trees is eucalyptus. And now in the plan calls for allowing the eucalyptus forest to live out its natural lifespan, but not let it regenerate. So what we've been doing is removing eucalyptus saplings. And then in this project, we're going to be targeting the older eucalyptus. And the plan, there are several areas that are I highlighted in the packet that you received that allow us to take out trees that might potentially be hazards, and John's going to talk about that. I just want to say the funding for this project is through a Lighting and Landscape Assessment District that voters passed in 1996, also called Measure R. And so we've got the funds from the last 20 years accumulating to pay for improvements on Albany Hill. So that's where the funding is going to be coming from for this eucalyptus removal project. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so Margot and I initially walked Jackson Streets and Taft Street, both with houses across the street from the hill. There's been occasional trees come down in winter storms as limbs come down from the eucalyptus trees mostly. And we identified 100 or more trees that would be nice to remove. But given the amount in the budget, I've been back a few times to prioritize trees to be removed. And I sent out a list of what I came up with as top priority trees. And the criteria basically is a tree that complete tree failure or partial failure would hit a target, meaning something of value, like power lines, cars, buildings, people, the street. So Jackson Street is the worst of the two streets. The hill's steeper there, and there's a few trees that are leaning. There's one that's leaning into another tree that's dropped some limbs. Let's see. Anyway, I identified 28 or 29 trees on Jackson Street. My list kind of changes every time I go there, but what I'm looking at are trees that we can take out without opening up the remaining trees to too much wind exposure. Taking out trees where there's a risk of them hitting targets. Eucalyptus trees are notorious for sudden limb drop, where unexpectedly a limb just breaks out and hits the ground. Green, live limbs, especially in the summer, dry season, that's when something like that happens. In the winter, last winter, I think we only had one tree came down on Taft. A eucalyptus came down across Taft Street, but past years, I can see evidence of lots of eucalyptus falling on those streets. And on the hill in other areas, several eucalyptus came down this past winter. The idea is to get some of these trees out of there, open it up for the native trees, the more valuable trees that are there. There's toyon, there's lots of oak trees, trees that will take over the space, take the space, keep the hills secure, and create a better natural environment for wildlife and whatever there. So I think that's it. I think this is informational, so if anyone has questions about it, we can talk about and discuss it.
Question. Will removing the trees destabilize any of the remaining trees, or is that part of your assessment?
That's what I mentioned. I looked at trees, and I looked at what looked like the worst trees, and I also considered trees that are going to open up the trees behind it to wind exposure. And the answer is yes. If you do that, there's a first layer of trees that's grown tougher because it's at the edge. And then now the next layer of trees are the edge trees, and they're not as tough and strong. But most of these trees, I've left several along the edge that are nice, strong, straight trees, look healthy. Taking out the more kind of gnarly ones, the ones with dead limbs, the ones that are leaning into trees that are nice and tall on the edge. There's one section where there's a cluster of 13 trees, but behind it, it looks like there was a slide a long time ago, so there's no big trees back there, so those would be safe to come out.
When you take a tree out, are you just cutting it and leaving the stump, or are you actually excavating the roots?
The eucalyptus are tough to deal with. They resprout. A lot of species resprout. What the plan is, the IPM approach is to black tarp, to secure black plastic tarps over the stumps to attempt to suppress or kill the stumps back. So the stumps won't be pulled or ground out. They'll be left in the ground. So if there's erosion concerns, the stumps, the roots are still there. You know, there might be little erosion because trees slow rain from hitting the ground, so rain is going to hit more directly. But then again, there's other plants and trees that are going to really pop out once those trees are taken out.
Poison oak loves it.
Poison oak, yeah, there's poison oak there too. We're leaving that.
Because you'd have my vote if you want to take it out. I'd totally vote for it.
Any other questions?
Yes, your report starts out with the fire threat. And is there anything to do about that?
Well, these are trees near buildings, so you know the less eucalyptus trees there are, the less fuel there is. Eucalyptus they're blue gum eucalyptus is the name, and the gum means the oil, the sap that's an oily, flammable material that kind of helps these trees burn like crazy. But besides that, the limb drop and the constant twigs and the kind of woody leaves they have and the woody nuts And the bark that sheds constantly builds up on the ground, and it creates a layer of duff that when there is a fire, that just kind of smolders. And it's the kind of thing where if there's a fire department comes, puts out the fire, and it's still smoldering on the ground, sometimes unknown, and it flares up again. So that's one reason, or several reasons, why eucalyptus are kind of high fire risk. So we're targeting, again, these trees along the street. That's another reason, as well as the possibility of failure.
So
as well as opening up space for the native trees to grow out too.
So I don't know much about the options here, but should there be a fire break of some sort around the homes? And is that a city obligation, or notify the homeowners to do that, or?
Yeah, I believe the fire department does monitor that in terms of your protective space, your vegetation management. And so if they see conditions that are out of whack, they will send letters to homeowners if they're not keeping that protective space around there.
And would they send a letter to the city saying that the duff is dangerous? Or no, I mean, seriously.
Well, there's a street. It's different. So there's a street in between the houses and the trees, except for one area on Taft where the buildings kind of end and then the natural area begins, and there's a lot of eucalyptus, and we targeted 3 large multi-stem that are closest to the house there, so that there's already a 10-foot or so space between the trees and the buildings, but this will push that back a little further too. So
Okay, thank you. That does answer my question.
Anything else? Is this still is there a public comment now? Okay, so is anybody from the public want to come speak on this?
Hi, Ed Fields again. Are you able to bring up a Google map and show the area where these trees are? I think I know where it is, but I want to, I mean, I don't think there was a map provided, just the address list. And that's related to my second question, which is, do you think that there's any impact on the area where the monarchs are nesting? So, yeah, I mean, show the relationship kind of between those areas, yeah. Right. Right. I mean, I know where the monarchs are and I know where the streets are, but it'd be nice if somebody could say this is the band that we're looking at. Thank you.
On a similar theme, the monarchs, they're being decimated, as this lady probably knows from the sounds of it, because of loss of habitat, cutting the trees down, and of course pesticides. And we're just adding to their demise. I did the count, not this November, the previous November, and they're up to 2,000, which is a lot that year. It was down again apparently last year. And regardless of which tree they select, they don't necessarily just stick to one, a couple little trees. But as you said, once you start decimating, removing trees here, and you destabilize the land, you're moving trees there. It's a small area of land. If you worry about fire, just concrete the whole thing over. It's ridiculous. And grasses, they also burn in a fire. All the other stuff, poison oak, that stuff burns in fires. So say the eucalyptus trees are causing all the potential fire problems by itself is ludicrous. And I think you should take into consideration how lucky we are that we have been selected by the monarchs to actually show up in our neighborhood. When they're so in danger, we have that bunch of them here every fall, November, December time. And I think it's terrible to do anything that is other than protect what few butterflies and native things we have here. And you say the eucalyptus aren't native, they're 100 years old plus, and animals have adapted to them. I'm not pro-eucalyptus, anti any other tree. The Monterey pines, they nest in, obviously you know they hang out in there too. So I just think it's really short-term thinking. I have no problem with doing a fire prevention, whatever, but you're going to destabilize. You're going to destabilize that whole hill. And okay, the rains come, and you pulling these trees down, you're not even removing them properly, you're just putting a piece of tarp over there. It's not. It's just going to make a mess. It's just going to make an absolutely destabilized mess. Is what you're doing, and I think there should be more consideration to the monarch butterflies, etc., etc. I just don't understand. Like we removed the burrowing owls. They didn't move to the new location. They've been there for God knows how many centuries. They didn't remove to a different field when you remove them for your mitigation at the ball fields. These monarchs, when you cut down their habitat, they're not going to hop and find another tree down the street. They're just going to not be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to, yeah.
And as Margot walks up, I will say that Margot is coordinating, I think we're starting next week on our monarch study.
Yeah, the city has just hired a biologist to do a study and assessment of the monarchs on the hill, where they go, where they roost, what habitat requirements they're going to need. So we're not going to be doing any removal of eucalyptus on the crest area where they tend to congregate. So this is just on the east side where they have never been seen in that area.
You want to stay up there?
Yeah, sorry. I guess that was my question is there any reason to wait until that study's done before doing this removal? Is there a timing issue on the removal? Has it already been scheduled?
Well, there is somewhat. You don't want to be removing trees when birds can be nesting in them, which is springtime through summer. So this is an ideal time to be doing it in fall, winter.
And I guess I'm wondering, because the monarch study is going to be done, when is it going to be done?
Well, starting very soon.
Starting very soon.
Through the next few months, yes.
And
They arrive in October-ish and through December.
it is pretty much the same time as tree removals, is that right?
Approximately.
I guess I'm just
yes.
wondering if since the study hasn't been done yet, how to verify that those trees are not habitat for the monarch butterfly.
Well, that's something that I will be discussing with the biologist when I meet with him in the next week or two. And I can confirm that while we're going ahead with plans for the eucalyptus removal. And if he thinks that there's some issue with that, then we can reconsider.
I think that's a good practice. And I personally would love to hear the results of that conversation, just so that we're not especially if there's well, I understand the timing is good now for this removal,
Right,
but
yeah.
it's also, we don't want to do something prematurely if we have this information coming soon.
Sure, yeah.
Yep, can work on that.
I just have to respond to this lady. The city is so good at spending money unnecessarily. There are state level and federal level research ongoing for God knows how many years. It's all accessible internet. I can get you the person who charges phone number, name, contact, email. There's a local person in the area who does the things in November. They are these experts on monarchs for God knows how many years. The documentation is here. They have maps of Albany. They have maps of the whole country. They have maps of the whole of California. Already it exists. It already exists, including Berkeley and Albany. Why you reinvent the wheel? I can find it for you. Just give me a couple of days. I will send it to all of you. It's already here.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just reminding everybody, it's just informational. We're just getting.
Yes, okay. So it's informational. Okay, no action.
Just wondering, how much was this estimated to cost and how much is left in the Measure R budget?
For this year, budgeted for hazardous tree removal was $20,000.
Okay.
Okay, so should we close that item? Okay, so thanks. So the next item is Street Tree List Subcommittee. Shelley, do you want to?
Yes, John again. John has been working on this. There was a request of the commission to revisit the street tree list, approved trees. What I'll say for John is we're not going to discuss it tonight, but we would talk about having a subcommittee because the list of trees he's recommending to take off, but also to add some too. And when the original tree list was prepared, I believe that was in 2010, they had a tree task force who really looked at the different types of trees. And so I think it'd be valuable if we at least had a couple people to work with John, so that when we bring it back to the commission, there's probably a better presentation and kind of a narrowing down of that list and information.
So is this the time then to ask for those volunteers? Any volunteers for the subcommittee? Okay, wait, so 3, how many can we have?
3. We have 3.
So is that good? 3?
That was quick.
Yeah, that was great. Wonderful.
Don't need to do it.
No, I think that's great, yeah, so 3, great, okay, so that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. The soda tax.
Okay, soda tax, most of you are familiar with, it was on the ballot in November of 2016, and part of that measure, which was Measure 001, was approved. The soda tax was approved by like 72%, but we started collecting it in April. To date, we've collected about $45,000. That was for August. And in the ordinance, it calls for 4 of the advisory bodies to come up with recommendations on how to spend that money in the future. Your recommendations will get passed along to council for their consideration at basically what they're calling a special meeting, where they're going to discuss this and invite other medical professionals and other interested parties to come up with a plan, a project, event, activity that would spend the money. So in this, I did just copy and paste in there the recreation department staff. We do a retreat every year, and we brought this topic up because it was on the November ballot, so we discussed it just as a discussion point. And I included that there just to kind of spark your minds a bit.
I thought I'd missed a meeting.
No, you did not. What we did in ours was to challenge the staff to come up with what we were calling our big, hairy, audacious goal, which was to make Albany the healthiest square mile. And then they went from there. And I thought I'd add that in here as some suggestions, but it is up to you to make your recommendation to the council.
And how does that recommendation get communicated, Shelley? Is it you that you attend that meeting and say, this is what we came up with? Is that right?
Yes, I would make, or include it in the overall staff report probably that goes to the council. You don't have to have the final tonight. We have one more meeting. We're allowed to kind of finalize in October. So if you want to just brainstorm tonight and discuss it, I can take notes and then prepare it for October to review.
And I'm wondering what, within this body, what's like the breadth of what we might consider? I think you mentioned before a class, right? Recreation class. So yeah, what else?
Right. We're collecting this money. We want it to go into, all of it to go into as much program as possible and not necessarily like paying to have another staff person administer a new program. So you want to think about things, and the idea is that what if we were to offer our nutrition classes or cooking classes for youth for free? So some of that money would pay for that instructor to offer that class. That would be an easy thing. We already offer classes like that, or exercise classes. That would be a benefit, so we could maybe expand that, where we're offering more classes that are free if they fall into some category. The other one is, I think there's an example. I hope I don't, give it away for one of the other commissions, the Social and Economic Justice, but they were been talking about installing bottle fillers around town to encourage people to drink water.
Oh, that's
right. So those are the kind of ideas that have been get people kind of thinking about. Oh, okay, that's kind of a great way if we encourage people to have a water bottle and fill up around town. So again, up to you.
Have you had any discussions with the school district?
I think the water bottle filler does come from a program they have. I believe they have a student on their commission, and they have started to do that at their school and giving out water bottles for kids to use on campus. So, but other than that, the school district in the ordinance is going to be asked to participate as well, to give input to the council.
We have a new water. Sorry, what am I? Not water.
Bottle filler?
But water fountain. Thank you. Isn't there a new fountain that's going to be installed in Memorial Park? Am I wrong about that?
We're going to have so many new fountains going on. You have approved putting in a bottle filler at Dartmouth.
Okay.
We'll go in. The Public Works Department has done a wonderful job of fixing a few fountains around town. The Albany Greenway fountain at San Gabriel has been repaired and now works, which is great. They have brought back to life the fountain that is going to be in the Albany Greenway Plaza, where they're doing the work. There's a historical fountain there that will now be operating soon. We have a bottle filler we installed on the Little League Snack Shack in Memorial Park, and we'll be replacing, proposal to replace that drinking fountain on the side of Memorial's building between the two restrooms with a bottle filler.
Great.
To discourage sand. We have a big issue with sand and drinking fountains. Kids bring sand to the drinking
You think
fountain.
that's going to help?
I think it is.
But even so, then you still don't have to deal with the sand, right? Because you can just put your bottle in there, right? That's what I was thinking.
It'll still back up.
That's right, it'll still back up.
Not as much water will go down the drain, though, with a bottle filler.
That's true, you're right.
So is that something we could, I mean, I'm just to brainstorm, not to say that this is my recommendation, but is that something we could look into for Terrace Park also?
Oh, yes, yeah, there has been discussion. There are two water fountains there, one at Tennis and one up by the playground area.
Yeah, they're not used much, but.
No, there's sand problems with both of those.
Yeah.
It has been discussed with the Public Works operations. We talk about this a lot, and repairing the Ocean View. There's two fountains at Ocean View at the ball field that do not work because they are not hooked up properly. And removing those permanently to add a bottle filler on the side of the building, the Ocean View Friendship Club building. So.
Also, do we have a sense of the revenue that's coming in from that tax?
It's at 45
sorry.
right now.
I'm sorry, you told me.
No, and the estimate when they were preparing the measure was 223,000 was the estimate.
And it's 45 now, and it started in April?
It started in April, yes.
So is this money earmarked for a new program, or are there existing programs that could benefit from this money? I was thinking of the street tree planting. Right now, residents pay to get their trees planted, but maybe this money could go to offset those costs, or bike racks around town. Big Belly, we talked about Big Belly, and that it was $3,000 per garbage can, and that seems to, I wonder if they could use some money, or maybe like Bike About Town and Marin Mile. Those are some recreational activities that the city sponsors, and I wonder if some of this money could go towards those programs to, like for Bike Around Town, maybe there could be different raffle prizes that would bring more people out. And for Marin Mile,
Marin Monster.
Monster. Oh, I'm sorry. I've never done it. I don't know that much about it, but, I'm just thinking, like, is there some way to put that money into those programs to bring out more people? Because those are programs that really do engage the community in outdoor, transportation type.
It is not earmarked. It is a general tax that comes to the general fund, and that is the job of council is to say how we should spend the money. And so your recommendations would be put into the mix along with the other advisory bodies, yes. So that is a good example of, you have an existing program that we could make either improved or more accessible by being free, which would be.
And I mean, the other thing that comes to mind is the equipment on the Albany. Like, we had limited funding for the equipment along the Albany. We had those community members coming out about that parkour thing. Yeah. So, I don't know, we could enhance either what's it called? Across from the senior center, the little
plaza?
Right. And the exercise room, or we could install some equipment along the Albany, which is our #1 used park. And that would touch on Parks and Rec, transportation, and social justice might be into it as well.
Mm-hmm. What about bike share? I know that there's the Ford bike share that's going into North Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we could put a node like at Solano area and actually get people going from North Berkeley to Solano. Mm-hmm. For one rack, it's something like 20 grand, and there's an ongoing cost to maintain it. But it's surprisingly affordable for
like the Ford bike?
Yeah.
In terms of recreation programs, I think it's a great idea for the existing some of the nutrition and food programs to be offered for free. And also, I'm wondering if there might be just some programs that are in Berkeley that instead of having a staff person, but just something to outsource that we could bring into Albany and also either offer for free or discounted.
So
Is there space and staff effort to have more classes? It's not clear to me, you said free. Is that existing classes would be free? Could we offer more fitness classes?
Yes, we could. Yeah, we can offer more. You know, it's always based on who participates. So we offer lots of different classes. Some go, some don't. But I can tell you that our summer camps for nutrition for teens is packed and it's overfilled. But that would be a great program if you offered that for free. You could also expand it because once you find out something is a free class, it makes a difference. Then those summer camps can be fairly expensive. Yeah. So I think there's an opportunity there. We are opening the Greenway, which would be nice if we actually could pay someone to either lead demonstrations on how to use that equipment or other ways to exercise outdoors. Those are all great ideas, yeah.
And I would like to second the idea of more street trees. You know, when we first moved to Albany, which was 31 years ago, there were free street trees. You just put in a request and they came and planted it. And I think, you know, trees add to health.
Yes.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think I like that idea too.
Any more? Or you? So please, if you think about it in the shower or wake up in the middle of the night thinking of an idea, just email them to me and I'll just compile the list. If you can get me your ideas prior to the next meeting. So our next meeting is October 12th, I think. Is that right? Maybe, how about if we say October 1st, as long as that's not a weekend for a due date?
October
Is that
1st
okay or
is
no?
no, Sunday. It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday?
Yeah.
Is that okay if it's a Sunday? October 2nd. It's a Monday, okay.
That's fine.
I don't do anything on the weekends.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? We're done with that one, right? So
Thank you.
next item, 6-4, Friends of Albany Parks events.
I believe, I don't have a total update for you on this, but did we have people who attended the gala at Terrace Park? Did anybody?
I was supposed to and I missed it.
Okay, yeah. It happened and it was great. We did a cleanup and it was great. The comments that I got from Liam, who runs those programs, is that there were a lot of great input, and they were kind of going along things that we were already trying to do about removing some of the signs. They don't like all the signs. There was a lot of sign pollution, which is one of our targets, is to work on our rule signs coming soon. But Terrace Park is one of those neighborhoods. It's a neighborhood park, and it is people invest in that park and take care of it. So it's always a good group of people there. We have one coming up, which is the Creekside Park cleanup. That is the area along Cerrito Creek, and we call it Creekside Park. It's a meadow, but they usually do a tour before, and then some sort of creative, Margot left, some sort of creative ivy rolling or something that they do in the area. So if you can make it, it's great. It's nice to have a report from one of you if you can go. If anybody knows you can go, it'd be great.
That's for the, okay.
Creekside cleanup.
And at the galas, only 3 of us can be there at the cleanups in the big.
Yeah, everybody can go to that one.
So we should all go.
Yep.
See you all there.
There is usually a little walking tour in historical, which I know you've gone to before, and it's really great. You get to see some of the different areas that Margot has been working on, and she gives a great tour. It's either Margot or Susan Schwartz.
And they don't have the volunteers, or they have the volunteers avoid the areas of Poison Oak, so you're
They do. They are.
That's good.
probably not going to.
Very nice.
I still get it, but it's not their fault.
If I could go back 2 announcements, 'cause we got through our stuff, is just that we're about to start Albany Local Week. This is a recreation thing where we work with businesses to promote local businesses. We challenge residents for 1 week to do everything in Albany. We have that crazy scorecard. I'm challenging each of you to take a scorecard out and at least do a couple things. I know I've seen some of you at Music in the Park, so that's points. That week is full. We do Marin Monster, which is a 10K, and it's fabulous. We're doing also a movie night, which is with As You Wish Yogurt. That's on the Saturday, I believe is Saturday. Sorry, it's a long week. Wednesday we have Music in the Park. Thursday is it's new and improved. It's Pino's Pints and Pizza. Used to be Wine and Pizza Block Party. It is now, we've added Mr. Dewey's into that. And so that is a block party that is going to happen in the parking lot behind Little Star. It's Little Star Pizza, Solano's Cellars, and Mr. Dewey's are teaming up to bring that. There's music and fun.
When is that?
That is on Thursday of Albany Local Week, which I believe is the 28th. And then the Friday is a food truck Friday in the parking lot at the community center. There'll be 4 food trucks there, music again. Saturday is the movie night. There's a senior open house, which is on Wednesday. Lots of free food there. Yes, the Chamber of Commerce is running Best of Albany this year, so I don't know if you've voted. They're having their awards party on the 23rd. It really kicks off the Albany Local Week. It's really a celebration of local businesses and stuff, so. Lots of points. You get 5,000 points for doing the Marin Monster.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Because it's hard. It's the hill your car won't go up. Yeah, that's the hill.
All the way up Marin?
Oh, yes.
Monster.
That's why we call it. And then there's a monster at the top. We actually have a monster. Oh, yes. It is lame. Yes. So it's a big week. I want you to get your scorecard out of your. I'm gonna email it to you. I expect to see you turn it in. I'm challenging you.
Okay, so, and then future agenda items.
Board meetings count, because.
Did you want to say something? Okay, go ahead.
So we've received a number of questions about the issue of the community garden and if we're going to consider recommending that it be moved. And then, of course, there's the related dog park issue. So I'm not sure what our next steps are, or if we need another report or.
You know, that actually is an item that I was thinking of, is this idea of looking at the city and the different spaces in the city that are available. Is that something, Shelley, that we can aim for next meeting? It's a big one, huh? Is it a big one?
It is a big one. And September is really hard for recreation. Yeah.
So what do you think? Is there a proposal for like a different date that's better?
We could shoot for November, if,
Does that workable for you?
huh? Or January.
No. Yeah, I mean, we should do it when it makes sense.
This is their.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have
It's crazy.
Yeah.
15 events in the next, whatever.
Well, I'm just not even clear what the next step is, because I saw the city's report before I was a commissioner.
Oh, yes, yes. And we've collected a little bit more information that I got today, so I want to be able to share that with you guys. And also, what I would say the next step is, when I brought it, it was like, let's throw this out there and see what happens. And it wasn't a full, necessarily, report. And so I can do a more complete assessment of the actual measurements of the 2 spaces and get some more input from people and do a full outreach to everybody. We had.
Sorry, so there's maybe 2 different things. One is the dog park, community garden, don't know how to describe that. But also there's this idea of looking at other opportunities, because when we talked about this in the past, I'm not sure if you were on the commission yet, but we really wanted to separate this idea of just the swap. So we should look at one point, look where there might be space for community garden, regardless of dog park issue or not. And so just look at the city as a whole, I think, because there's this issue of the shade. So I guess that's my question is, can we do maybe that's something we could potentially do as a first step? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's on your work plan. And it comes from City Council about working with Caltrans about some of their open spaces to see if any of those can be available. They're not necessarily great places for a community garden, but for the other option, which is the dog side of it, or the mountain bike, it was those 2. I have to see where they are in terms of when we were expected to have that done. But let me do some investigation on it. I don't know how to give you the answer about who I talked to at Caltrans and how that process goes. But
I see.
I can work on that for sure.
Okay, so then I'm wondering when we should put that on, which month we should put that on the agenda, do you think?
But probably not October.
Not, okay, so November, where you're just getting back to us with this idea, because I can understand it takes a while for us to even be able to know what we can consider, right? So maybe November, an update, we can see if there's the future date where we can discuss it. Does that make sense? Okay. So for next month, do we have anything for next month?
I'm sorry, can we just get back to that?
Sure.
So what is on the calendar or the agenda for November is the bigger question or the specifics about those two?
So we've decided we're not going to talk about those two. It's not
Okay.
going to be a swap. We understand that there's a problem with the community garden, and so we're looking for a new location for that. Might turn out to be Section B, we don't know, but we're not talking about a swap anymore.
And that's why.
So what we're talking about is coming back with more input on the Caltrans space and maybe other areas that would be open. I have some ideas that I would suggest.
But which could include the community garden area as a potential space for something. It's not going to be community gardens.
Right, I just, not this month, but frequently, members of the Albany Community Garden come and say, well, can we plant our next season's vegetables?
Yes.
So if we know that this very preliminary step isn't even going to be addressed until November.
It's going to be a while.
Yeah, I think you should
I
expect,
hate
yeah.
to keep,
It doesn't go that fast.
I have been
I
in
know.
communication with them, and I let them know that this is not an immediate thing. They should plan normal planting season for this.
okay,
Yes.
great.
Is it good? Okay, thanks. And there's any agenda item suggestions for next meeting? Okay.
We have this tree that
Okay, thank you. So John will get back with that information on that tree that we talked about this meeting.
And then maybe if the tree subcommittee can get together, the tree list committee.
So, okay, so a potential update from the subcommittee, is that right? Or no?
If
Okay,
you can get a meeting with John, then you guys can discuss and come and let us know what you guys came up with.
okay.
The tree list meeting. If possible.
Okay. And the street tree policy, one thing that to me keeps coming up is who pays for what, who owns what. I don't know that that needs to be part of the policy, but I feel very unclear when I'm talking to people, and I do feel we've seen a number of situations where a homeowner is in a tough situation, you know.
Do you, you know, it's funny, because Shelley, Gino, and I have been working on this in a way, very deeply. So, and I do think that I think it would be interesting to have just that discussion without even talking about policy and like, what are we looking at big picture wise? What are these incentives that we're having? I don't know, Shelley, we can talk about whether or not that's something we could have, like Todd, you mentioned too, about this weird dynamic where we're asking property owners to pay for their sidewalks, but then we will pay to cut down their tree, you know, but we won't pay for the sidewalks. So it's I think the incentives are misaligned, and we could talk a big picture, but I wouldn't want to say that there's going to be any action because the staff is doing their,
It's not our bailiwick anyway.
exactly. So I don't know. I'm not, well, when you're saying it's not our bailiwick, you mean we shouldn't discuss
No,
it, or?
I think that certainly, to the extent that impacts our decisions, which I think it clearly does, we all need to understand
Yeah,
what money is, you know, how this is set up. I think it's very important we understand that.
right.
I don't think, and we could potentially make some sort of recommendation or suggestion that the city considered, but it's not for us.
Right, we can only recommend it for city to council
Somebody
to
else
change.
look at it.
Right, and so,
Yes, I think that it's fine if we want to have some open discussions about the issues that keep coming up and put it on the agenda to talk about them
Yeah.
without saying we're revising the tree policy at the
yes,
moment.
I think we should do that,
And
yeah.
and I, without talking about the topic, but I think tonight's tree was a great example.
Yes, yep.
Well, and the other piece was, as a homeowner with a couple of street trees, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to prune it. You know, so my husband's going out there just to prune the stuff that's down on our cars, and I said, stop, it's not. I mean, I think we need clarity.
Maybe we can
think that
ask John
homeowners
to
need clarity.
join
Yeah,
us.
this is part, when the staff got together, it was the first part we talked about.
Great,
Making
great.
sure that we have, and this is what John's task is, to pull everything together, an education campaign about who's what and who owns what and how do you maintain and what. A lot of things we've been talking about, illegal pruning, and is there a way to enforce some sort of a fine per se? So we have community development working kind of on that side, how we can implement that to reduce that. So we could talk about some of those items, you know, that John's been working on, and John.
Maybe we could ask him, he's not here, but we can maybe ask him to do a short presentation for us, and then just a Q&A where we're asking him, he may just have it off the top of his head, so we can just ask him questions about, because he's looking at this policy right now, so he should know all the answers to those questions. Yeah.
Super, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So is that any other? Just make any other? Okay, so meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.